Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the JD Rucker Show. If you are watching the evening show, which starts at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, then awesome. If you're watching the daytime show, which starts at various times depending on what's happening in the news, then that's awesome as well. But either way, you should find me wherever you want to find me, whatever platforms you use, Rumble, X, YouTube, BitChute, all the various networks, all the various areas where the show's broadcast. You can find all those, plus my websites, plus my socials, and even my sponsors. You can go to jdrucker.com/find, jdrucker.com/find. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. You're listening to the JD Rucker Show. Let's begin. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the JD Rucker Show. To those who asked yesterday if I was feeling okay, yes, I am. You know, I have been a little tired lately. I will admit it. I've been a little drained. It's been hard. It has been definitely hard, but we're getting there. And I appreciate those who reached out to me saying that I looked a little tired, because I was, and I'm tired again today, but the show must go on. For those who do want to reach out, by the way, the easiest way to do so is to go to jdrucker.com/talk, jdrucker.com/talk. That comes directly to me, as does my open DMs on X. You can go to x.com/jdrucker. I don't even have to be following you, just send me an open DM. I try to respond to just about everybody. Yeah, and I mean, not necessarily the trolls. Those I usually read about 30 seconds and I ignore it. But for those who have feedback, questions, whatever, I try to reach back out, not necessarily in a timely manner, but eventually I do. So jdrucker.com/find, x.com/jdrucker. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me. Big show today. Starting off with, you know, I already know that the first story is one that I'm going to get some flack about, because it's going to be like, oh, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, or you're wrong. And this, look, I love the fact. I want the Department of Education gone in probably above all other departments. Seriously. I mean, it really is the biggest waste and the most detrimental. I mean, you could say that the EPA does nothing but get in the way. Fine. And that's an agency, not a department anyway. You can say that the Department of Energy is redundant. You can say all these things about various departments and agencies within the federal government. The Department of Education is the most destructive. In other words, we will be better off. Our education system will improve dramatically if we just got rid of the Department of Education. So I am wholeheartedly in favor of dismantling it. Unfortunately, my first segment, I'm going to be delivering some sad news. Yes, tomorrow President Trump is supposed to be signing an executive order to dismantle it. And no, it won't stick. It won't stick. I'm sorry. Like I said, I don't think that he'll be able to get a single justice to side with him, because it's just part of the Constitution, not the Department of Education, but the fact that when a department, even an executive department, which it is, when a department is created by Congress, only Congress can get rid of that department. The president might have control over what happens with the department itself, how the direction is set and everything else, but as far as dismantling it, which is allegedly what the executive order is going to declare, that's just not an executive power. It would have to come through legislation to dismantle the Department of Education. But the good news is, I think this is I can only see this as part of a long-term strategy to first get a win for the Democrats, because we have a Supreme Court that likes to divvy out wins and losses based upon whatever. Don't get me started on John Roberts. I already spent too much time talking about him yesterday. But yeah, I think that from that perspective, it's a quote unquote win for the left, but that can then hopefully translate into reciprocal wins on the right, which I think is the intention. And then after it's lost, after the executive order is undone by the Supreme Court, then they will go and do what I believe they should be doing, which is to incrementally dismantle and change what the Department of Education actually is, and then hope that the Republicans can get a supermajority in 2026. Unlikely, I know, but still very possible. It's still early, and we'll see how that goes. So don't hate on the show just because I say something that is unpopular. It's just the truth. I mean, it's reality. We have to deal in the real world here, and in the real world, a president's executive order does not undo a piece of legislation signed by Congress, signed into law. Jimmy Kimmel, Tim Walz, they made fools of themselves. Unfortunately, their audiences seemed to like it, and that part was very discouraging because they were talking about domestic terrorism against Tesla. They were talking about many millions of people probably who are going to be affected negatively as a result of the tanking of Tesla stocks. Now, today, Tesla did rebound. Yay. Good for them. But yeah, I'm going to expose old Jimmy Kimmel once again, and Tim Walz for that matter. Swatting, I'm doing a very long segment today. Not very long, not hours, but longer than your standard 5 to 10 minute segment on the idea that swatting should be considered, must be considered attempted murder. It's not a hoax. It's not a nuisance. It's not some trolling. It's dangerous. And unfortunately, many conservative, alternative media personalities, influencers are currently getting swatted. We're hearing about new ones every single day. And the only way that's going to stop is if we actually, do something about it. The JFK files, we're over 24 hours into the drop of the JFK files, and so far there have been no smoking guns. There have been some bombshells, some important revelations that we'll be discussing, but nothing that's said, no clear-cut order from the Vice President of the United States, top secret to the Director of the CIA, we must kill John F. Kennedy in Dallas. Nothing like that. I think many of us were hoping for something like that. That would have made things a lot easier. But no, now we still have to sift through 80,000 pages. Ugh. Thankfully, there's other people doing that, not me. And then, last but not least, we have Kash Patel put out a video this morning. It wasn't to us. It wasn't a public video, even though it was released publicly, I believe, by, I think it was Bannon's War Room that released it. Somebody released it. And so it got out to the public. It's great. It's fantastic. And we discussed that. His change of mission is the way that I had worded it, but it really is, and because he was talking about staying on mission, it really is just a returning to what the FBI really was supposed to be in the first place. It has been just absolutely gutted, morally, ethically, and it's no longer, I would say, it doesn't count if you're not going to use the powers that are vested in you in an agency or a bureau such as the FBI. If you're not going to use those for good, for actually fighting crime, then can they really say that they're the elite crime-fighting unit of the world? I don't think so, but not yet. With Kash Patel, with Dan Bongino as his deputy, I think that they are going to return. And today's communication it was an internal communication to the FBI agents and other employees of the bureau. I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. It was great. So we'll be discussing that as well. It is a big day for news. And I want to get some feedback from you all about this. Number one, first and foremost, please, if you haven't already, subscribe. I see the same people. I get to look at the stats. I see that a whole lot of people are coming every day, but not subscribing for whatever reason. Not sure why. Same thing. I see a lot of people. We're getting, at times, depending upon when you combine all the platforms and you look at the statistics on the replays and all that stuff, we are reaching a good chunk of people, as the show is growing dramatically, and I'm very, very happy about that. Unfortunately, I'm not getting a ton of thumbs up or likes or anything like that, and I'm not sure if that means that I'm not liked, which is possible, but I doubt. Not because I've got an ego. I do, but that's not the reason that I doubt it. It's because people keep coming back. Again, the return visitor, the return watcher numbers are through the roof. I've seen the statistics for many shows, and those of you who are watching, chances are this isn't your first show. If it is, subscribe. If it isn't, subscribe. Either way, subscribe. But I do want some feedback because I've noticed a trend when it comes to, especially on sites like X and everything else, everybody's going to the short stuff, right? Everybody's going to the short stuff. I am fairly long-winded, not like overly so. I don't think that I'm too verbose, but I do tend to take maybe a 4-minute segment and make it 5 minutes because I have just a few more things to say about it, right? Well, there is a wisdom, or I guess a tip. It really was a tip that I got, not from like directly from anybody I know, but just as I'm doing my research on improving the show and making it more sticky, more subscribable and likable, which I apparently need help with. As I was doing my research, I came across the notion that in 2025 you really need to be doing those 1 to 2 minute hits. 90 seconds is apparently the sweet spot. So my question for you all, and again, you can answer this by going to jdrucker.com/talk or hit me up at X at JD Rucker through direct message. My question for you is, should I be doing a segment? Because I can do it. I've done it in the past. A segment where it's just, 1 to 2 minute hits. Just here's the news, here's the news, here's the news. Not literally making that sound, but you get the idea. Is that something you guys would like? Maybe if I do a 20, 30-minute segment with 15 stories instead of like today I've got like 5 or 6 stories. And that's probably going to cover hour and a half for 5 or 6 stories instead of doing just that. This wouldn't be to replace that, by the way, because I'm not going to change that. I like talking about stories and I like going into more in depth, but not too in depth. Not documentary length, but then again, not just like boom, 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 done. But what if we added that segment? What do you guys think? If we had, quick hits segment where I'm just going through some of the important news that wasn't important enough to cover for longer segments, but important enough to mention, on a daily basis. If that's something you guys want, just let me know. jdrucker.com/talk or x.com/jdrucker. All right, let's get into this. Let's do it. Let's just, what? We're just going to do it live. We're going to do it live. But first, let me go ahead and get a word from our sponsor. Is the bird flu just the latest example of the powers that be attacking our food supply? I would argue that yes, it almost certainly is. Now, I'm not a doctor, not a scientist. I'm not sitting there in the laboratory looking into bird flu and trying to figure out if it was man-made or if it's, really spreading to whoever, or if it's in this milk or that chicken or those eggs or whatever. I'm not doing any of that. All I'm doing is looking at the writing on the wall. And the writing on the wall for the last few years has said, hey, they're attacking our food supply. It was Klaus Schwab. No. Sorry, it was the other guy, Henry Kissinger. There we go. His predecessor, his mentor. It was Henry Kissinger who said, who controls the food supply can control the people. And it seems as if that's exactly what they are trying to do. I'm a huge fan of, number one, freeze drying your own food. Okay. If you have the time and the money, go get you a freeze dryer. You can go to jdrucker.com/harvest, jdrucker.com/harvest to get you a very high quality freeze dryer, the freeze dryer that we use in my companies. Or if you don't want to spend that kind of money, because they're pretty expensive, or you don't have the time or the energy or whatever, you don't want to do it yourself, it's time to stock up on long-term storage food. You can find 4, count them, 4 awesome options, ways that you can start to accumulate, or continue if you already started, to accumulate high-quality long-term storage food, oftentimes food that will last 25 years. Start getting it built up as best you can, because there may come a time in the not-too-distant future when acquiring food will not be as easy as it is today here in the United States of America. We're already seeing inflation. That's already hitting us. What happens if they inflate it all the way all the way. What if they really try to make us eat lab-grown meat, quote-unquote meat, abominations, or whatever, lab-grown something, GMO this, GMO that, or heck, bugs, crickets, cricket burgers. Get in line for your mealworm bread, the mealworm bread lines. Gosh, so many possible ways that they can come after us, attacking food production plants, again, bird flu, whatever. And I don't think, people, well, no, the Trump administration won't do that. I don't think this is the Trump administration, to be clear. If anything, I would say that the most likely candidate, of course, is the globalist elite cabal. Second most likely candidate would be communist China. Okay, there's a reason why they're buying up as much farmland as possible. And for whatever reason, we've allowed that. But hey, I'm focused on the future. Go to jdrucker.com/food, jdrucker.com/food, and stock up on as much long-term storage food as you can. Will President Trump really be able to dismantle the Department of Education? Unfortunately, the answer is almost certainly no, and I'll explain why here in a second, but let's get to the story about his coming decree, his coming executive order. According to theblaze.com, Trump will reportedly sign executive order to eliminate the Department of Education. This will come on Thursday. President Trump is expected to sign an executive order to end the Department of Education, according to several news media reports. Trump will sign the order at a White House ceremony with several Republican governors and state education commissioners, according to USA Today, which cited several top administration officials. The president is expected to order Education Secretary Linda McMahon to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return education authority to the states. Critics are likely to challenge the order on the basis that congressional approval is necessary to close the department and take the issue to the courts. Other acts of the president have been shut down by various judges, and appeals may lead to the U.S. Supreme Court. And let's keep that in mind when I go into why it's probably not going to work. White House Principal Deputy Secretary, Press Secretary Harrison Fields told USA Today that the order would, quote, empower parents, states, and communities to take control and improve outcomes for all students. He cited recent results from the National Assessment of Education Progress exam that showed a national education crisis. Our children are falling behind, he said, and that is very true. Ron DeSantis came out and he posted an op-ed in the Washington Post about it, in support of it, of course. Democrats are going to oppose it vehemently. They'll oppose all proposals to eliminate the Department of Education, as they are wont to do. They own the teachers' unions, or perhaps more importantly, the teachers' unions own them. They have argued that doing so would end vital funding for the resources for students across the country, and that's just simply not true. That's not how this would work. If you transfer the power to the states, they're making the decisions. They're not necessarily not going to receive the budgets. And that's the part where I'm a little, I wouldn't say confused. I'm not confused by any means. That's the wrong way to put it. I'm in a bit of disagreement with the White House in this regard, but I can understand the play that they're making. There are two plays that can be made here as it pertains to the Department of Education, which I love. Okay, play number one is to throw it out there as a sacrificial lamb, basically, that they're going to say, look, here is what we want, and then it'll work its way up through the courts, and the Supreme Court is going to shut them down. They're not shut down the Department of Education. They're going to shut down the executive order. They're going to rule that it is unconstitutional. Why? Well, because it was created by Congress. The executive branch does not have the power, even through the president issuing an executive order, they do not have the power to dismantle a department that was created by Congress. This was signed into law by Jimmy Carter back in, 1979, went into effect in 1980. It was through an act of Congress, the Department of Education Organization Act of 1979, and it's there. It's stuck. We're stuck with it. The only way that it can be removed is through further legislation, which would mean, of course, they would have to get a supermajority in the Senate and to be able to pass that. Now, the question then is, does the Trump administration know this? Of course they do. So then the question becomes, why would they do it? And that's where it gets into strategy. This is intended to be a win for the Democrats. It's intended to be a Supreme Court victory for the left. Unfortunately, because we have John Roberts as the Chief Justice, he likes to lean in whichever direction he feels will bring balance to the court. He's a big balanced guy. It's idiotic. He's also probably compromised, as I covered in my show yesterday or the day before. But as it pertains to this, he won't just give the Trump administration every possible win. He will prevent them from winning some of them. And this is one that he can say, hey, the Democrats won this one, the Republicans can win this one. It's a trade-off. I know that sounds wonky, but that's the truth. I mean, that's what's happening here. There's no illusion in the White House that they can use an executive order to get rid of a department that was created by Congress. That just can't happen. There's no chance that the Supreme Court will allow it. As a matter of fact, I would not be surprised if it was 9-0 against this particular executive order. Now, again, the strategy there is to offer up a sacrificial lamb executive order so that they can get wins on the other side. Great. I get it, but I disagree. I think that the proper course of action, and wait, let me say, I disagree now, but the fallback might actually be what I'm about to describe, which is to slowly work down the Department of Education and start to use, because it is still an executive branch, to be clear. Even though it was created by Congress, it is an executive branch, and as a result, they can start to disperse differently. They can start to operate differently. They can start to send more power, more control back to the states. That is within their purview, and that would stand, executive orders to that regard would stand. And as a matter of fact, they wouldn't even necessarily need executive orders for a lot of that. It can just be done by decree through Linda McMahon herself. That would be what I would love to have seen instead of this executive order. But, as I said, it's very possible, I would say maybe even likely, that the idea here is to use the quote-unquote judicial political play here of giving the Democrats a win on the executive order and then falling back afterwards on, okay, fine, we can't eliminate the department. Only Congress can do that. Therefore, we're going to use our executive power that they cannot challenge to start reducing staff, to start reducing grants, to start sending, more of the power, the control back to the states. That's what I would love to do up front. But again, I'm not a political strategist. If their notion here is to give the Democrats, give the left a win at the Supreme Court, and then fall back on the dismantling by incrementally, basically, then yeah, that's probably a good strategy. Wouldn't be the way I would go. But then again, that's why I am a podcaster and editor of the Liberty Daily instead of sitting there as a consultant for the Trump administration. Democrats and leftists think the domestic terrorism against Tesla owners, Tesla dealerships, and anything that has to do with Elon Musk, really, they think it's funny. They are encouraging it by making light of these attacks against an American company owned by an immigrant. I'm smiling not because of the events themselves. They're horrific. I'm smiling because these people, they are total idiots. Jimmy Kimmel, who I promised months ago that I would never be posting anything about Jimmy Kimmel again, but he's just so horrendous. Sometimes I can't avoid it. Listen to this.
Our co-president, Elon Musk, sent a SpaceX vehicle to bring the astronauts back, and when they landed, he fired them immediately upon landing. Tesla stock is way down, almost disastrously so. People have been vandalizing Tesla vehicles, new Tesla vehicles. Please don't vandalize. Don't ever vandalize Tesla vehicles. And so...
Funny stuff, huh? Funny. So let's, even if we take away, let's say we ignore the domestic terrorism aspect just for a moment. Let's say that we ignore the fact that there are people whose property is being destroyed, allegedly at least, by other Americans. Could be foreign interest for all we know, but they are being harmed, vandalized, in many cases destroyed for the sake of politics. That should be absolutely, positively just, I mean, Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter. Left, right, doesn't matter. You should not be encouraging this or laughing about it or any of this stuff. It's insane. I don't know what's more disappointing. Jimmy Kimmel, which that's not disappointing. We know that he's an idiot. But the fact that they were cheering American citizens, cheering for the destruction of other American citizens' property, American citizens who have done nothing wrong other than abide by the leftist notion that climate change is going to kill us in 10 years, so we better get electric vehicles. Where's the reward? The reward is, oh, you bought the wrong electric vehicle owned by the wrong person who used to be the right electric vehicle and the right person just a couple of years ago, but hey, now he's out there. That jerk is trying to end government waste and make the government more efficient, save taxpayer dollars. He's just pure evil. But let's ignore that for a second and focus on the reality of Tesla stocks going down, which they are up, by the way, today. Praise God for that. But the fact that Tesla stocks are going down, it's not Elon Musk. He's still the richest man in the world. But there are currently, I don't know how many, but many Americans and their retirement funds and their investments, a lot of them are tied into Tesla. So your average, everyday Joe Blow, Republican, Democrat, whatever, a lot of them are being hurt by these attacks. And it's not just legacy media either. You even have former Democrat vice presidential candidate Tim Walz out there also making a fool out of himself by making light of this domestic terrorism.
Phone. I know some of you know this on the iPhone. They've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So, and if you own one, we're not blaming you. You can take dental floss and pull the Tesla thing off, and take out. Just telling you. Saying on my phone, I know some of you know.
He's making funny. It's funny. It's funny. Oh, but we don't blame you, except you are the ones if you own a Tesla and your Tesla is getting keyed. You own a Tesla dealership and your inventory is being burned to the ground. Your employees are terrified by these domestic terrorists. Let's make jokes about it. Right? This is what Democrats and leftists are doing. They're making light of it. And that encourages those who are engaged in this domestic terrorism, whether it's lone wolves or if this is state-funded terrorism, perhaps from communist China or whoever. Maybe it is organizationally funded terrorism. There are some indications that the infamous George Soros and now Alex Soros chain of companies and NGOs, that they are behind the funding of much of this domestic terrorism. And let's be very clear, crystal clear about this. Whether you're Jimmy Kimmel or Tim Walz or any of the MSNBC hosts, because they seem to all be gloating over this, if you do not unequivocally denounce this violence, these attacks against American citizens, then you are pure scum. I mean, I'm sorry. I am more disappointed with American citizens clapping and cheering and laughing at Jimmy Kimmel or Tim Walz or whoever else is making light of this domestic terrorism. I am more disappointed in the current situation than just about anything. I mean, it's one of those situations where you feel almost embarrassed, like your kid does something that's like, they commit a crime or they do something, they get in trouble in school, and you're really embarrassed for them. praise God, I've never really had to, well, I've had to suffer a couple of those, I guess. 3 decades of parents. There have been a few embarrassing moments, but you know, you love them and you get over it. You get over it. Well, I love my fellow Americans. I love the people that are out there, even the ones that I disagree with. But this is challenging. This is embarrassing. This is like, oh my gosh, really? You're going to laugh about the suffering of American citizens over politics? You're going to laugh. I mean, keep in mind, it's not like, oh, you know, we're against the MAGA people. No, I would argue that the vast majority, maybe not vast, but a good majority of the people who own Teslas, who are being harmed as a result of this stupidity, many of them voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's not like, oh, we have a political, ideological disagreement with this particular person, so we're going to vandalize their car. No, it's just, hey, you bought a Tesla. The way that, by the way, left-wing media and legacy media and Democrats and everybody, they were all about that, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, before buying X, before talking about free speech, before his red pilling into being more focused on supporting freedom and then eventually supporting President Trump and joining the Trump administration. Before all that, oh, Tesla, that's great. Look at how amazing Tesla is. Look at this amazing technology. Look at Elon Musk. He's going SpaceX and he's going with Tesla and he's doing all these great things. That was legacy media before. Now, you know, many of these domestic terrorists were cheering on Tesla and Elon Musk. Oh, you know, we're going to save the planet. Now, all of a sudden, they're going after the people that bought into their own rhetoric, the people that believed them when they said we've got to buy Teslas or else the world is going to melt in 8 years. Those people are being rewarded by not just the domestic terrorists, but also Tim Walz, Jimmy Kimmel, their audiences that are laughing at this stuff. They're being rewarded by being ridiculed, by being vandalized. And yes, by being terrorized. The infrastructure here in the United States of America is, how should we put it, challenged. It's old. I mean, it was probably good decades ago, but now it is showing signs of age. And as a result, many Americans would be in a great deal of trouble if there was bad weather or natural disaster or some sort of God forbid, some sort of attack that would take out the power grid for an extended period of time. Unfortunately, the vast majority of Americans do not have any real backup. I mean, we'd be sitting there waiting for FEMA or the electric company or somebody to turn the power back on. I am a huge fan of solar. The challenge with solar, of course, is that it can get very expensive, usually thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars to get a good solar generator and system. I have found a good one that is inexpensive, and I mean relatively inexpensive. It's still hundreds of dollars, but at least it's not thousands or tens of thousands. And it's the one that I use. In anytime there's challenges. It's also portable, so even when we go out, throw it in the trunk or the back of the SUV and go camping, go do whatever. It's always good to have a nice portable solar generator with you at the time. For me, I am a huge fan of the Grid Doctor. Go to jdrucker.com/solar. jdrucker.com/solar. And check it out. I think we're on sale right now. Well, I don't want to say right now because it depends upon when you're watching this, but at least as of right this very second, there is a nice sale there. So go to jdrucker.com/solar and get you a Grid Doctor 300 today.
"1776 is back, America. Hello, my name is Jake Lang. I'm a January 6th political prisoner that was recently pardoned by President Trump. We want to thank the president sincerely for freeing us from Biden's disgusting gulags. January 6th was a day when free men stood up against tyranny, and our founding fathers would have been shoulder to shoulder with us. Patriots sacrificed 4 years of our lives for this country, and I will not let that sacrifice be in vain. The weaponized DOJ, the FBI, Gestapo, and the deep state regime conspired to silence us. They tried to destroy President Trump and persecute all of his supporters, and I will never allow that to happen again. It was God who got me through the gulags, and it's God who's going to make America great again. January 6th was a cry for change, and I am that change. The tree of liberty is thirsty, America. We may have won the 2024 election, but the revolution has just begun. We're going back to the Capitol, and this time as your next elected officials and lawmakers. Florida, vote for me for United States Senate. My name is Jake Lang, and I approve this message.
Swatting should be prosecuted as attempted murder, because that's exactly what it is. This isn't a hoax. It's not a nuisance. It's not a prank. This is an attempt by radical leftists, radical globalists. I'm not sure who it is, but I do believe it's coordinated. We can tell that by the sheer massive increase in the number of people who have been swatted. We're talking about, I think, Will Cain over at Fox News said a baker's dozen. I'm sure it's actually higher than that. I'm sure there are many people who have been swatted who we just haven't heard about it yet. We're talking about something that used to make the news about once or twice a year, and now we've had, at least a dozen just in the last couple of weeks. This is a coordinated attack against independent and conservative media and influencers, not just media. There are people like Juanita Broderick who have been hit she doesn't have a news site. She doesn't have a podcast. She's on X. She does her thing on X. She just goes about her business as a patriot. And yet she was swatted, which is despicable. This is such a wonderful lady. She really is. I've had her on my show a couple of times. She is literally one of my favorite guests that I've ever had on the show. She's a riot. There's no reason why she should be swatted. Not that anybody should be swatted for any reason. Again, we're talking about attempted murder. Will Cain, as I noted, did address this. Finally, somebody at Fox News is addressing it because this is a big story, and we're not hearing nearly enough about it.
More on a story we've been following on this show, swatting against conservatives. We told you yesterday about Texas radio host Joe Pags being swatted.
911 confirmed that the county sheriff is there. We got a 911 call, hostage situation. Dogs have been shot. They're hiding from the bad guy. And the person on the line, I've now heard the scanner traffic since, said they were me. But, well, here's a caveat. They said they were me, but didn't say my full name. They said Joe Pags. They didn't say Pagliarulo. As a homeowner, I would use my full name. They also described the house the wrong way. And they were so urgent in getting the police to break down my door and possibly kill me in my doorway. They told them, I heard this on the scanner traffic, that he's bleeding out upstairs. Please hurry and get inside. Now, none of that was going on.
So Joe Pags' story is not unique. And this is another reason why I do believe these are coordinated attacks. We keep hearing the same basic phrases. It's either, upstairs bleeding out, or somebody's already been shot, or there are the notes that, this person, the actual person who, the homeowner themselves, they've gone crazy. I think they've already killed their kids. They've got their wife held hostage by a knife, not sure what to do. Please hurry. It's always, please hurry, please be urgent, please bust down the door and start shooting. That's their intention. That's why I do believe, just reason number 15, that I believe this should be prosecuted as attempted murder.
And Joe Pags isn't the only one. Social media influencer Gunther Eagleman posted, "The gloves are off. First off, my family is safe. My house was just swatted. Some ignorant bleep called in a fake hostage situation." Conservative podcaster Nick Sorter also posted, "Both my dad and my sister were swatted tonight. A dozen cops attempting to kick my dad's door in at gunpoint." And then most recently, Juanita Broderick posted, "Well, I just got swatted. About 10 police and SWAT teams showed up. They said the caller said there were 2 masked men and people inside that had been shot." It's insane. What's going on? Buck Sexton, co-host of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, joins me now. Buck, and that's just the start. Something like a baker's dozen worth of conservatives over the past week have claimed to be swatted, including Cat Turd, an InfoWars reporter as well, Sean Farash, many, many more saying just in the past week or so, they've been swatted.
I know some of these individuals, Will. They're friends of mine, and it's very troubling to see just how deranged the left is in this moment. Although I have to say it's not really a surprise. I mean, this has been around for quite some time, where anybody who speaks out against the hard left of the Democrat Party or opposes whatever delusions they choose to live in the moment can be subject to this kind of criminal activity and possibly lethal activity. I mean, it's very important people understand in a situation where, and I think Joe Pags articulated this very well, a situation where you have like an ESU, you'd call it in New York, Emergency Services, SWAT's what people call it. Obviously, it's why we're talking about swatting incidents, and they're arriving thinking that they might be met with gunfire, thinking that somebody could be bleeding out in the situation. Tensions are already going to be very high. They're moving very quickly. This is not going to be a gentle knock at the door and, hey, we're doing a wellness check. There might be men with guns pounding on the door or even kicking that door down, thinking that they'll save lives in the process. So, you know, there is no specific federal law, at least not to my knowledge. I've spoken to some members of Congress about this, that addresses swatting. I think there should be. Clearly, the federal tie-in with communications involved is easy. Different states have been considering ways to do this, but things like false report, that doesn't even begin to cover this. So I think as a tactic, this needs to be made explicitly illegal via federal law, and there need to be very harsh penalties because this crap needs to stop.
Well, on that note of the law, Senator Mike Lee did say, should swatting be prosecuted as attempted murder? If you send heavily armed men to someone's house with a false assertion that a violent crime is being committed, you're creating a grave risk to that innocent person and that they'll get shot. Kash Patel, by the way, has also said he's looking into this, Buck. So this possibly could be something. It's a matter of time before something awful happens out of one of these stories. More on a story we've been...
Yeah, a matter of time. It will happen. And they know it will happen, they being the people that are perpetrating this. I still stand by my assertion that this is a coordinated attack. And I'm glad that there are people looking into this at the federal level. But the federal government, especially the legislators, they do move pretty slowly in trying to get enough support from Democrats on this might be challenging. I think this should, I mean, to be clear, this should absolutely positively be a bipartisan effort. This should be 100%. Every single vote, Democrat, Republican, House, Senate, should be able to vote on a national swatting law. And I do hope and strongly encourage them to address this. Mike Johnson, John Thune, Mike Lee, whoever. Somebody needs to put this on the books as quickly as possible, because we're talking about, if they're going to wait until somebody dies, that's going to be too late. Okay, there have been people, to be clear, people have been killed as a result of swatting in the past. This isn't like, a hypothetical here. There are, at least that I know of, 2 deaths that have occurred as a result of swatting. One was a heart attack. The other one was an actual police killed somebody because they thought that this person was dangerous. And especially when you're going after conservatives, I couldn't imagine. I mean, somebody, I know Joe Pags. I know that he's armed. So for him to show the restraint, praise God for that. Praise God that the law enforcement officers did as well. But at some point, are we going to really wait until there is a death, until somebody is gone as a result of this before they act? At the state level, it needs to happen immediately as well. And this can be, especially in red states, this can and should be done this week. I mean, literally. If they're in session, then make it happen. If they're not in session, get in session. Okay, no reason why any of these states should have anything other than massive penalties, massive risks. Stop treating it like it's a prank. Stop treating it like this is, it's a nuisance. It's filing a false report. No, this is attempted murder. Brianna Morello, who I've had on my show. She's had me on her show many times. She has a news show called Independent Newsroom where she's doing like these 90-second updates. And as the Lord would have it, her most recent update is one that has to do with swatting, and she has some exclusive information. Let's see what she has to say.
A disturbing new pattern has emerged where conservative influencers are being targeted by swatting, prompting concerns from the FBI. In the past week alone, 15 conservative influencers and journalists have fallen victim to these swatting instances. Last night, InfoWars host Owen Schroyer became the most recent target in this alarming trend. He joins a growing roster, which includes Betty Johnson, Gunther Eagleman, Kat Turr, Joe Pags, Chase Geiser, and several others. Now, the FBI is investigating all of this, but local law enforcement is being reminded that this is a serious, serious threat. The National Police Association has shared this comment exclusively with the Independent Newsroom, saying in part, the National Police Association denounces this weaponization of law enforcement against its own citizens and urges the media, political leadership, the public, and American law enforcement to be aware of and speak out against this disturbing trend. The false reporting of a violent act in progress is a crime and should be rigorously investigated and prosecuted. Swatting is an act of violence against both law enforcement and those being targeted. If you believe you're being swatted, please immediately dial 911 and alert the operator that you are the homeowner, you are home, and you believe that you are being swatted. I'm Brianna Morello, and that's your Independent Newsroom.
Good stuff. I'll be watching her updates. I think she is one of the top independent journalists out there today. So let's talk about this, though. You know, we always talk about what the risks to the people that are being swatted. What about the cops? Okay. I mean, like I said, you know that many of these, if not all of them, are armed. These are people that aren't sitting back and waiting for police. They're not going to, if they truly are being attacked, they're not going to call the police first and pull out their firearm later. They're going to pull out their firearm, investigate, and act accordingly. And if a situation arises where law enforcement, thinking that they're going in to save lives, attempts to save lives by going in as aggressively as they should in a real situation, then there's a distinct possibility. I'm actually, considering that she said there was 15 incidences so far, I'm a little surprised. Seriously. I mean, I'm a little surprised that nothing horrible has already happened, because Lord knows that it could. It is time to act. I mean, even let's just say the worst case scenario is a wasting of taxpayer dollars, right? I mean, these SWAT missions, when you send these people out, this isn't like, oh, you know, go grab a donut for $20 an hour. No, this is a serious operation. You're taking these resources away from possibly being used elsewhere when they're needed. I mean, there's, on every level, swatting is horribly wrong. And that's why I do believe it should be considered an attempted murder, because that's really what's going to be necessary in order to make it really stick. Kristi Noem, DHS Secretary, says, under President Trump's leadership, we will not sit idly by as conservative new media and their families are being targeted by false swatting. DHS has the ability to trace phone numbers and track location information. We will use it to hunt these cowards down. This is an attack on our law enforcement and innocent families, and we will prosecute it as such. I do hope to. And again, she can do a lot as in DHS, but they can only prosecute the law. And right now, the law does not favor those who are against swatting. It favors the swatters. I mean, California, $1,000 fine max on the misdemeanor, a few months in jail. Is that enough to dissuade a radical who is perhaps being paid quite a bit of money, perhaps by George Soros or whoever? Is that risk really going to dissuade them, especially if they have the technology? What if they have the technology to fight this, to be able to keep themselves anonymous? What if DHS is not able to properly track them? InfoWars, who, and as they had noted on Fox News, there was one person, there's actually been two, both Chase Geiser and Owen Schroyer have been swatted, both of them with InfoWars. So with that understood, I mean, can we fight it? InfoWars did do a segment about a company that may say, we're not making accusations here, but it is pretty suspicious what this company can do, and perhaps what this company is currently involved with in the swatting in the United States today.
It's people calling the police and saying you're killing your wife or killing your family, trying to get you killed. And people have gotten killed many times by it. Dozens. I mean, over 15 people overnight got swatted. A lot of them have already put the videos up. It all started with my reporter, Chase Geiser, 2 days after our reporter, Jamie White, got executed. Most of these people, including other Texas talk show hosts who announced he got swatted a few days ago as well, are on the Ukrainian enemies list. So this is terrorism. Now, the idea that the NSA and the government and all the rest of it can't go find out where these calls are coming from, they're spoofing the numbers, is very dangerous for the police, very dangerous for the citizens. That's all completely and totally insane.
Chase, are you inside? You acknowledge. Or Chase, can you step out with your hands up?
Travis County Sheriff's Office, step out of your house now with your hands up!
A wave of swatting calls has hit hard lately. Fake emergencies sending SWAT teams crashing into homes, especially targeting right-wing voices in alternative media, schools, politicians, and streamers too. Hundreds of hoax 911 calls, spoofed numbers, voices faked with tech. Where are they coming from? Do we know who's pulling the strings? Here's a question. What if the system itself is our Achilles heel? Ericsson, a Swedish telecom giant, powers our emergency service. They may not answer 911 calls, but their networks and gear route them. These are our most vital links in a crisis. With swatting exploding, could their tech be a backdoor? A way for bad actors, even foreign governments, to weaponize our own system against us? Ericsson's past raises red flags. They shelled out over $1 billion to settle U.S. bribery charges, years of dirty deals across at least 5 separate countries. In Iraq, payments brushed up against officials in ISIS-controlled zones, then shrugged off as business as usual. If they'll play loose overseas, what's stopping exploitation here? Sweden, their home base, adds doubt. Neutral for centuries, only recently joining NATO on March 7, 2024, in the wake of the war in Ukraine. If push comes to shove, where do their loyalties lie? So how important is Ericsson to our military and defense? Well, more than 50% of the world's 5G traffic runs on Ericsson networks. And over 50% of DOD 5G deployments include Ericsson equipment. So, are they trustworthy? Since August 4th of 2022, Ericsson has been caught up in a civil lawsuit filed by over 900 Gold Star families, accusing the company of funding terrorist organizations, including ISIS, in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria from 2004 to 2021. The plaintiffs allege Ericsson's payments to these groups, made to maintain operations in conflict zones, directly supported attacks that resulted in deaths and injuries of U.S. service members and civilians, including high-profile victims like journalist James Foley and aid worker Kayla Mueller. There is a growing need to secure our emergency communications against the influence of foreign actors. With scandals such as these, and a homeland moving against our national agenda, we should not trust Ericsson with our vital emergency communications. When the line rings, who's really listening? On January 27, 2025, Michael Ray Corey testified before the Arizona State Senate on this exact issue regarding 911 and Ericsson.
Ericsson is completely entrenched in our telecommunications networks and infrastructure. They control our 911 emergency services portability contract. They work with local law enforcement officials and the FBI to provide access to our phone conversations in real time. The fact that they are a foreign corporation means there is no oversight. Because they are a private institution, they are exempt from the Freedom of Information Act, which does not apply to them. They handle their own cloud data infrastructure, which is similar to Amazon Web Services, and along with their endpoint security, which is essentially all included in-house through Ericsson's what they call Ericsson Management System, or EMS. The fact that Ericsson holds so much power over our country's network infrastructure and other contracts should be absolutely alarming. If Ericsson were to get hacked, that would make the hack an internal issue that our government can do absolutely nothing about. If they were willing to fund and sponsor ISIS and then not only plead guilty, but pay a criminal penalty of a federal penalty of $1 billion, and then $325 million further criminal penalty. Essentially, the question would be, what else would they be willing to do? Because the period of time in which they were sponsoring ISIS was over 17 years. So the question of, do they have to abide by the United States Constitution? They do not.
American infrastructure must be under American control.
Apologies to Michael Corey for not realizing that that was a compilation video between both InfoWars and Michael Corey. He did the latter part there discussing Ericsson. Good stuff. And I should have noticed, because when I first watched the video, I noticed there was a tone change. I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's new. That's very Glenn Beck-ish almost. So I thought InfoWars is changing. No. Somebody just compiled it like that, and I didn't watch the last 5 or 10 seconds when it is attributed to Michael Corey, so he definitely does obviously deserve a lot of credit for that important information. But here's the thing. Regardless of whether or not this is a conspiracy that involves multinational corporations or foreign countries, foreign NGOs, or if it's all domestic, doesn't matter. I mean, it does, but it doesn't matter as far as what needs to be done. Two things need to be done. And it appears, based upon what we've heard from Pam Bondi, what we've heard from other members of law enforcement, it seems as if they are finally starting to treat this seriously. So two things need to happen. Obviously, they need to get it figured out and start arresting people. And then number two, and this really should proceed, it should happen, as I said, this week. But at the state level, the crime itself needs to be treated as severely as it should be, which is to treat it as attempted murder. Put people away for a long time, not a matter of months and $1,000 fine. They need to go away for a very long time. They need to have real skin in the game, a real risk to their lives as a result of them risking other people's lives, including law enforcement, including conservative media voices, influencers, patriots. And here's the thing, to be clear, if let's say that they were going after left-wing influencers and journalists, I would be saying the exact same thing. Swatting is bad regardless of the target. This isn't just because they're going after Benny Johnson and Juanita Broderick and Owen Schroyer and people like that. It's because they're going after American citizens. And they're doing so in a way that is coordinated. And it needs to stop. And the only way it'll stop is if we change the laws at the state and national level, make it real, make it painful for them to do it, and then let's catch them. Let's actually catch the bad guys and put them away for a very long time. Otherwise, this is going to continue. So this isn't one of those things where, okay, well, next legislative session, we'll put it on the calendar. And no, somebody needs to act. They need to act immediately. There's a rush, a gold rush, going on right now, not just by central banks, not just by entire countries, not just by those trying to refill Fort Knox before Elon Musk and President Trump get there. No, there's a gold rush happening amongst individual Americans. It's a gold and silver rush, and it's specifically attracting people of retirement, of or near, I should say, retirement age. People are starting to realize that maybe they don't need their IRAs or 401ks or whatever stuck in the stock market. Maybe they should be looking at physical precious metals like gold and silver. Now, I am not a financial advisor, so I'm not going to give you advice. I'm just going to tell you who to talk to if you've already made up your mind and you think maybe I should consider it. Go to jdrgold.com, jdrgold.com, or call 800-200-4653. That's 800-200-GOLD. And check out what the folks over at Genesis Gold Group can do for you. They are a faith-driven precious metals company. They don't do the scams, the cheats, the tactics, such as, offering free or bonus silver. It's never free, and it's not really a bonus. You're paying for it. They just tack it onto the price and then say, "Oh, look, here's free. Here's bonus." No. It's they probably have a good role to play in government, at least the old government. I would imagine that Doge and Elon Musk would sniff out their scams. But if you want to deal with a direct and honest company to do a tax-free rollover or transfer of your IRA, go to jdrgold.com, jdrgold.com. You'll receive a free definitive wealth protection kit, plus you will be contacted by my good friends at Genesis Gold Group.
If you are someone complaining about this administration deporting people to a prison in El Salvador and cheering on an activist judge who tried to stop the transit, I'm going to need you to explain to me, like I am 5, your thought process, because how any sane person could take issue with 238 foreign gang members from a terrorist group who have taken over American cities, murdered American people, flooded this country with drugs, being deported? It's beyond me. America's not a dumping ground for foreign criminals. We do not exist to clean up other countries' gang problem. You guys are actually insane, crying over these people not getting their due process and essentially being uprooted from their lives and their families. Good? Maybe let's not humanize MS-13 gang members who get off on murdering people. Last time I checked, the American citizens who lost their lives at the hands of an illegal didn't get their due process either. So I quite literally do not care about the well-being of members of the cartel. They can get out and stay out. And if you sympathize with foreign criminals over the safety of your American citizens, you can get out too and reside yourselves on the saving violent Venezuelan gangs hill that you so eagerly want to die on.
So we are now over 24 hours since the release of the JFK files. And have there been any bombshells? There have been some pretty interesting things. I wouldn't say there haven't been any smoking guns yet. There was no document that declared that, the CIA has ordered Operation whatever, Dallas, to assassinate President John F. Kennedy Jr. There was nothing like that we've seen so far. Is it possible that we will see some more bombshells, or there might be a smoking gun or two? Yeah, I think there is. We are talking about 80,000 pages, and even though with the assistance of artificial intelligence, a lot of people have supposedly gone through the entire document, I still think there's a possibility we will find out more. There will be more revelations in the coming days, but thus far, I would say it's been interesting. Especially now, one thing that is very, I wouldn't say good. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it is enlightening. Is how much foreign influence has played a role, possibly in the assassination of John F. Kennedy Jr. and others, including obviously his brother, and then Martin Luther King. There seems to be a really close tie-in between all three. And yes, there are foreign interests. There's points, some things point to Russia, some things point to Israel, some things point to Cuba, other things point to other nations. And it seems as if nothing definitive yet. Again, no smoking guns, but a whole lot of intelligence and plotting between governments, and specifically between the intelligence agencies of those governments. It's not necessarily our president talking to their PM or whatever. It's more like CIA talking to this spy agency about certain things. So that part I thought was extraordinarily interesting. But there have been some things. Let's go over some of the things that we've learned. This article comes from Colin Linebarger over at, I think that's how you pronounce it, over the Gateway Pundit. Author and JFK expert reveals a critical JFK file that was not released to the public and still remains a secret. And that's something that we'll get into. But first, they start off by talking about some of the things that we have learned about through the 1,123 PDF files that have been released as a result of President Donald Trump's campaign promise being mostly fulfilled. There are rumors that there are still many documents, not just the ones talked about in this particular article, but there are rumors that other documents are still floating around and have not been released through the archives just yet. Who knows? According to the article, there were several highlights, especially concerning alleged JFK assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. The files reveal Oswald was reportedly considered a poor shot during his target practice in the USSR. He was under surveillance by the CIA 59 days before the assassination, and, as many of us have assumed for a very long time, he was a spy. This wasn't just some disgruntled former Marine and Marxist. This was a guy who was a player. He was a player in the espionage game. The files also show that former CIA agent Gary Underhill claimed the agency was responsible for JFK's assassination. If you watched yesterday's show, this is the story I was talking about. We've apparently known about this since 2017 during President Trump's first drop of some JFK files. And I don't recall hearing about this. It was highlighted with this drop, but I checked, and again, this is information that was sort of out there, but I'm glad that it's at least getting highlighted now. And it doesn't say in here what he said, but I'll go ahead and tell you. Basically, he was telling friends days after the assassination, he was telling people, I'm not sure whether they were in the CIA or just acquaintances of his, but he was telling people that there was a small group of CIA operatives, agents, cohorts, whatever, who were responsible for the assassination of JFK. He was saying that again days after the assassination itself, and he was in the CIA. Now, he was apparently threatened. He was, I'm sure he was investigated. And approximately 6 months later, he committed suicide, apparently by putting a gun to the back of his head, because that's allegedly normal, which of course it's not. It looks like he was assassinated and shut up, and then the officials that were, I'm sure, co-opted by the Central Intelligence Agency or whoever. I don't want to assume that the CIA killed him, though that seems to be the most logical explanation. But whoever killed him was able to get the authorities, the medical examiners or police or whoever was investigating the case. They were willing to rule it as a suicide, probably at threat to them directly. As later found out. More shockingly, a man named Sergei Zhanono, I think that's Giornono, reportedly knew that Oswald would be killed after assassinating Kennedy, and that legendary civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. would also be assassinated. Giornono also allegedly knew in advance that Kennedy would be killed in Dallas. Now, that has always been sort of a sticking point for me, when we're talking about the, whether or not this was a conspiracy, or if it was a lone gunman, or just a group of a couple of people, or if there are foreign people involved. The thing that points the most to the notion that at the very least our government was involved was the fact that they had that he was down in Dallas in the first place in an open air vehicle, a convertible. It was the perfect scenario for an assassination. So that's something that seems to have been set up by our government. According to, back to the article, there remain questions, unanswered questions, particularly surrounding the CIA and the man who succeeded Kennedy as president following the assassinations, Lyndon Baines Johnson. James Johnston, author of Murder, Inc., the CIA under John F. Kennedy, explained to the USA Today that a crucial document exists but has not been turned over to the National Archives. This paper concerns the first one-on-one conversation between President Johnson and CIA Director John McCune, which occurred after Johnson assumed power following JFK's assassination. Philip Shannon, author of A Cruel and Shocking Act, The Secret History of the Kennedy Assassinations, notes that McCone has been long suspected of hiding crucial details from the Warren Commission, the panel that Johnson created to supposedly investigate the assassination. Shannon wrote a 2015 story in Politico that McCone was kept on as CIA director by Johnson and previously pledged full cooperation with the commission. McCone claimed during his testimony that the agency had zero evidence to conclude that Oswald was part of a conspiracy. Instead, Oswald was supposedly just a former Marine and Marxist who operated as a lone wolf. The Warren Commission took McCone at his word, but as noted by Shannon, the CIA later acknowledged that McCone had hidden information from commission investigators. There are also respected Americans, such as legendary political operative Roger Stone, who have been suspected who have long suspected Johnson played a role in Kennedy's murder, and I tend to wholeheartedly agree with that assessment. Americans deserve to see the conversation between LBJ and McCone because it will likely shed critical light on what both knew regarding Kennedy's assassination and perhaps shut down any so-called conspiracy theorists, or it could end up proving the crazies right again, as has been the case so many times recently. Back to LBJ, Roger Stone says that he was involved. I would imagine that, especially if we assume that it was the Central Intelligence Agency or the Deep State at the time, or whatever, certain internal manifestations that had an interest in getting rid of Kennedy, they would have wanted to talk to Johnson. They would have wanted to make Johnson aware. They would have wanted to own Lyndon B. Johnson prior to doing the assassination. Knowing what his role was in all of this, knowing where he stood in whatever policies they were against, whatever they were concerned with, knowing, questioning whether or not he would be loyal to his president or loyal to what they would say, are you loyal to the president or are you loyal to America? That was probably the sales pitch, and I'm sure that he came out because he was a scumbag. He probably came out and said, oh, no, totally, I'm with America. Kennedy's got to go. I agree. Again, that's based upon assumptions. That's based upon feelings, I guess. Definitely not based upon anything, any insider information that I have. With that said, let's turn to General Michael Flynn. He was on with Benny Johnson, I believe, earlier today, and he had some interesting thoughts about what happened with the JFK assassination.
Yeah, Mike Pompeo. Why did Mike Pompeo want to release these? What we're looking at is we're looking at an organization, the CIA, that is so rogue. The CIA is the fourth branch of government. The deep state is what forms around the CIA, and the CIA has infiltrated the White House. They've infiltrated every single staff in the House and the Congress. So when Miss Luna and other members of like the HIPSI or the SISI or the SASC or the HASC or the HAC or the SAC, all these different acronyms, right? Inside of those organizations, inside of those staffs, in the legislative branch, never mind in the judicial branch, there are elements of the intelligence community that have been in there for a long, long time. They just flow in and out, and some of them are what they call legacy people. So we've got to take this very seriously. This is not, finally the JFK things are, the files are released, and then, Sunday night or Saturday night, we're bombing the Houthis again, and everybody forgets about the JFK files. An organization of the United States government called the Central Intelligence Agency committed what we now know, this act of criminal conspiracy to not just undermine a president of the United States, but to assassinate a president of the United States. We have got to accept that or not. People can say, but I accept that. So now it is, what are we going to do about it? So maybe we waited, whatever it is, 75 years or something. I'm not a math major, but we waited this long. Okay. So these people are all dead and gone. Underhill supposedly put a bullet behind his head and shot him, and committed suicide. What is going to happen? Accountability. Everybody is held to account. Children are held to account by their parents. We hold the people accountable for all kinds of crimes in this country. We're trying. Tom Homan's doing things for this country right now to get rid of, these MS-13 thugs. Trump is trying to do all that he can, but he's only one man. What we've got to demand, and it's audiences like yours, Benny, audiences like yours that have got to say, okay, is anybody ever going to get in any trouble for this? Are we going to do anything? Yes. Are we going to take a hard, like John Radcliffe? I haven't heard John Radcliffe talk about reform of the CIA. I've heard Tulsi Gabbard talk about reform of the intel community. So I'm waiting. I'm not going to wait long because I do believe that we have to deal with the current level of corruption in our government, but we also have to learn from our this egregious history that we have, that we're part of. And we've done some other things as an American, as America overseas to screw things up. I mean, the attack into Iraq by the Bush administration was probably the biggest strategic mistake of this century. But this assassination of Kennedys, plural, and making sure that this body, this very smart, talented group of people couldn't get control of our government apparatus. Everybody knows what JFK said about the CIA. Most people don't know what Dulles did when Kennedy fired him. Dulles went ahead, just like what we're seeing right now with people like Obama and Brennan and Clapper. Dulles went, and he didn't leave Washington, D.C. He just went down the street and he formed another little, I'll call it a kitchen cabinet or whatever, of people outside and inside. He was still directing the operations of the CIA. That was right after he got fired by Kennedy. So that's very well known in the intel circles. So I want these congressmen and women to make sure that they describe this, and I am not emotional about this. I'm very matter of fact. Okay. I'm very matter of fact. I may be raising my voice on you, and I apologize for that because I'm in a different kind of room here. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I want people to understand that this is not a mistake. Okay. This was an egregious crime committed against the American people, committed against our government, committed against a president, committed against our Constitution. And to this day, no one has been held accountable that actually really did in fact do this.
Kudos to Benny Johnson for that great interview. And the best part about it was that he didn't say anything. When you have somebody like General Michael Flynn on there, you let him talk for 4.5 minutes. If If they want to keep talking, you just let them keep talking. And that's one of the things that makes Benny Johnson such a good interviewer. He knows when to jump in, and he knows when to shut up. And good kudos to him on that one. Here's an article over at the Dallas Express, DallasExpress.com. Kellen McGovern Jones reporting. It says, JFK files reveal CIA's chilling fixation on brainwashing techniques. Stop me if you heard this one. Yeah, you probably haven't heard these details at the very least. We've known, look, this has been an obsession of the CIA's for a very long time. I've talked about MK Ultra. We've talked about various other operations that we may or may not know about. Project Mockingbird, of course, but this is a little bit different, according to the article. President Donald Trump's release of thousands of files connected to JFK's assassination has included manuals connected to some of the most mysterious tools available in clandestine operations. One nearly 400-page trove of documents reveals a CIA fixation on brainwashing. At some point in the late 1950s or early 1960s, the intelligence agency created a digest of nearly all the available literature in almost every language on brainwashing experiments and techniques since the 1920s. Many of the documents have unclear origins and little context. Some manuscripts appear to be missing pages or are misplaced somewhere in the collection, leaving some incomplete or disjointed. However, they all share a common theme and methodically dissect the practical elements of how other countries interrogated and brainwashed people, including Soviet interrogation and brainwashing techniques. One document is introduced as Dr. Bauer's paper is directed at the question of the purported Soviet origins of communist techniques of brainwashing. Long name. It is a reaction against the popularly held belief that brainwashing is a deliberate exploitation of Pavlovian psychology. It is not immediately clear who this doctor is or how the CIA came to obtain his expertise. Pardon me. A later document that appears to fit this description describes the Soviets as both deliberately and incidentally brainwashing German prisoners. It reads that prisoners would be worn down by, number one, conscious Soviet efforts to manipulate the prisoners' environment, and number two, direct attacks upon the prisoners' belief systems, and number three, the general physical and sanitary conditions of captivity, which in a large part were unintended and the direct results of the war or living conditions inside the Soviet Union. The paper's author describes the various forces that could be employed to brainwash groups. And there's a quote from the document. Under conditions of extreme physical and mental stress, accepted group norms tend to break down, and the ensuing situation may best be described as one of everyone for himself. The Soviets fostered and accelerated this process by breaking up formal and informal groups and by segregating prominent resistance leaders who otherwise might have enforced compliance with previous group norms. By introducing a system of rewards and punishment, the Soviets channeled changed behavior in the direction of collaboration. In other words, they broke their will and they put them to work. There's also information about the Chinese communist interrogation and brainwashing techniques. Another set of CIA documents describe the Chinese as embracing a drastically different method of brainwashing. The documents describe far fewer instances of deprivation and violence against prisoners. One document of unclear origin describes a lenient policy among the Chinese captors, wherein the Chinese did not brutalize their captives and instead attempted to re-educate Americans with unawakened views. One document said the Chinese favored repetitious forms of questioning. And there's another quote. Another principle utilized might be called the principle of pacing. Of all the demands the Chinese made, the first ones were always trivial, but became progressively harder and harder to meet as time went on. If in interrogation, a man once got into the habit of giving answers to trivial questions, it was not long before he was asked more meaningful ones, until eventually he was asked to divulge highly important information. In persuading a man to participate, he was often asked simply to repeat a statement or to write down the question, and thus was gradually brought to the point of giving original or spontaneous material or engaging in self-criticism and mutual criticism spontaneously. Wow. Describing one method of interrogation for prisoners of war, a document said, the writing of autobiographies, the group discussions, the mutual criticisms, and so on, all demand that the prisoner of war take on an active role in the process rather than merely to sit back and passively listen to lectures. Repetition was apparent in almost everything the Chinese did. Points were repeated in lectures over and over again. If the thought conclusions arrived at in group discussions were not satisfactory, the men had to listen to the lecture again and repeat the group discussions. Interesting stuff. But again, no smoking gun. No clear-cut evidence that the CIA, which many of us, perhaps most of us, believe were at the very least involved, if not directly complicit in the assassination of John F. Kennedy Jr. or John F. Kennedy, and maybe Jr. That's a whole other can of worms. But the assassination of John F. Kennedy, was it committed by the FBI? Was it helped along by the FBI, CIA? Sorry, it's been a long day. Was it helped along by the CIA? Was it helped along? Was it actually committed by the CIA? We don't know for sure. And that alone tells us that, yeah, they probably did it. Is cryptocurrency a safe investment to back your wealth or your retirement or your life's savings? The answer to that question is I have no idea. And I know that my sponsors probably just had a heart attack when I said that, but it's true. And here's the thing. Anybody who says that they know for sure whether cryptocurrencies are a good investment for this or that or the other, they're probably selling you something. One of the reasons that I personally like to work with Block Trust, the reason that I tell people to go to jdrcrypto.com so they can also consider working with Block Trust, is because they're straightforward, they're honest, but perhaps most importantly, they know what they don't know. That's why they rely on artificial intelligence-driven data to help them make decisions on your behalf. With their managed accounts, they can get you into crypto and have you trading like an expert without you actually having to become a crypto expert. They make moves. They try to determine, okay, is Bitcoin going to go up? Is it going to go down? Artificial intelligence tells us it's probably going to go down. Let's go ahead and pull everybody out of crypto, put them in cash for a while, and then once it hits a certain mark, then we'll put them right back in. We'll try to advance their portfolio, whether it's an IRA or 401k or, again, cash. They're extraordinarily easy to work with. Go to jdrcrypto.com to learn more. See what they say. This is a very patriotic company, a very bullish company when it comes to crypto for obvious reasons. But I want to be clear. Just like me, they were very skeptical about even getting into the industry prior to President Trump's election. Once President Trump was elected, it made sense. They worked with partners who've been in the crypto industry for years, platforms that have been used in the past by hedge funds. Now they are open to the public, and it is, again, because President Trump won. This has changed the game for cryptocurrency, and it is allowing Americans, of whether you're a crypto expert or a crypto novice or anywhere in between, this brave new world that we're experiencing in cryptocurrency can be most easily navigated by working with Block Trust. Go to jdrcrypto.com, see what they can do with your retirement, your cash, whatever. It's easy. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not telling you, go buy crypto, go buy gold, go buy chickens. Actually, on that last one, it probably would be a good idea to go buy chickens.
The answer is no court can review it. Not the Supreme Court, not the appellate court, not the district court. Exactly. That's the answer. There is no court, including the highest court in the land, that has jurisdiction over this. And in part, because of the words of the Alien Enemy Act, as interpreted by the U.S. Supreme Court after it was passed, the U.S. Supreme Court held the Alien Enemy Act precludes, meaning stops, doesn't allow, judicial review of the removal order. This is the Supreme Court deciding a case after World War II had ended. Such great war powers may be abused, no doubt, but that is a bad reason for having judges supervise their exercise, whatever the legal formulas within which such supervision would nominally be confined, the Supreme Court majority declared. Accordingly, we hold that full responsibility for the just exercise of this great power may validly be left where the Congress has constitutionally placed it, on the President of the United States. That's the law. Casey, not the Supreme Court, not the appellate court beneath it, and not Judge Boasberg.
Kash Patel alerts FBI agents about their new mission. Now, of course, this mission shouldn't be new. This should have been the mission the entire time. Unfortunately, Patel's predecessor as FBI director, Christopher Wray, well, he had different ideas. He used to say that the biggest threat to America was right-wing domestic terrorists, which don't really exist. It's not a thing. Hasn't been a thing for a very long time, and he wanted the focus of the FBI to be squarely on those darn J6 grandmas who walked through the Capitol building. Yeah, well, we have a new FBI, a new director of the FBI, and a new direction for the FBI, as he detailed in a message directed to his agents and his entire agency earlier today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kash Patel, and I'm deeply honored to be your new FBI director, number 9. I've spent my entire career in public service, but now I'm excited to join you in the trenches. During my first week on the job, I've started getting up to speed on our current investigations. I had some understanding of the extraordinary work the FBI does to keep the American people safe, of just how much we're responsible for. But with every passing day, my appreciation for your expertise and your capabilities grows. I've met with our headquarters leadership team, interagency partners, and even the FBI Agents Association and the Society of Former Special Agents. I've also held my first civets with the SACs around the country. Because to effectively lead our organization, I need to get to know you. While I'm in this seat, I will fight for you every single day. I will take all of the criticism. I will advocate for what we need to accomplish our mission, the tools and the funding, all of it. Together, we're going to ensure the American people trust the FBI. We're going to be fully committed to constitutional due process, transparency, and aggressive congressional oversight. We're going to continue creating an expansive relationship with our heroic state, local, and tribal law enforcement partners. We're going to focus on getting as many personnel as possible out to the field. And we're going to get back to the basics: rigorous obedience to the Constitution, accountability, fairness, and the rule of law. Our priorities will be simple: crushing violent crime, defending our national security, and relentlessly holding ourselves accountable to the highest standards. Every day, you, the 38,000 guardians of justice, courageously form the front line in the nation's fight against our adversaries. Over the coming days and weeks, I look forward to shaking your hands and working together to protect the American people. Thank you. Let's get to it. And remember, put the mission first.
I really am happy about him. He was my first choice, by the way. You know, we've had a lot of choices with, well, we didn't have the choice. It was always President Trump's choice, but we had a wish list of different people that we wanted to be in different roles. And sometimes we got our choices, sometimes we didn't. Kash Patel was definitely my first choice, a dramatic upgrade from Christopher Wray. Now, you notice that he never said something that Christopher Wray used to say all the time. He never talked about defending our democracy. That is not, believe it or not, that's not the role of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He's led with that they were going to vigorously defend the Constitution. And that is the primary role, the most important aspect of the FBI, and really every government personnel, every government agency, is the defense of the Constitution. Because with the Constitution, we have a nation, we have laws, we have a system through which we can operate and thrive and become exceptional once again. Once we start abandoning the Constitution, once we start pushing for democracy and saving democracy, which isn't really a thing here in the United States of America, believe it or not, despite what leftist legacy media tells you, despite what Democrats holler, and despite what, unfortunately, far too many Republicans holler, reality is that the Constitution is the basis upon which we can, from a worldly perspective, the basis through which we are able to be a nation. Otherwise, without it, and without agencies like the FBI defending it, we are toast. Now, let's hope that this is the prelude. And when I say hope, I'm going to put it at about 98% certainty that this message to the FBI to the agents from Kash Patel, from their new director, is a prelude to the shift in priorities. Let's actually do what he said he was going to do even before he was nominated for FBI. He said that the FBI needs to be focused on fighting crimes, on catching bad guys, on investigating and preventing violence, and yes, terrorism. Let's hope that this means that we are very soon going to get to the bottom of all the swatting, all of the attacks on Tesla, all of the various crimes that are being committed right now by left-wing domestic terrorists. I know I mentioned it in the opening of the show, but it's worth mentioning again. We need subscribers. We need, I don't care if you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, X, BitChute, Getter, wherever. If you can hear me right now, if you're listening to what I'm saying, if you appreciate the work that we put into putting out this show Monday through Friday, at least, sometimes Saturday, sometimes Sunday, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, if you appreciate the work we're putting into this, then please subscribe. And please give me that ever-important thumbs up. It helps. The likes, the thumbs up, whatever, depending upon the platform you're watching on, those things absolutely help. They really do. You know, for years, I have always just been like, you know what, I'm going to do my show and let the producer, let somebody else handle this stuff. Or even when I didn't have a producer, you know what, I'm going to do my show, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. That, unfortunately, we live in a world, a digital world, you know, where asking for subscriptions, asking for likes and thumbs up and all that stuff is imperative. I have learned now, learned the hard way, that if I don't ask for it, they're not going to come. And if they don't come, then the show is not going to grow. Praise God, our show has been growing. I'm so pleased with the growth track of our show with the various channels, but it has to be faster. It has to be more. We need to get to 100,000 subscribers on Rumble as quickly as possible. I've been hovering in the 30s for like a year now. And that needs to jump to 40, 50, 80, 100 real fast. As far as YouTube, where it's technically speaking, it's an older channel. I mean, that channel is like 10 years old, but we didn't really start posting to it fully until very recently. But now that we're posting there every day. Now I want to get those subscriptions up into the 10s and 20s and 50s and 100,000s as well. As far as X and all that stuff, I have no goals there. I just ask. It makes sense. I mean, if you like what you're hearing, you might as well hear as much of it as possible, or at least have the option to hear as much of it as possible. You don't have to listen to every word I say or read every X post or whatever, but having that as an option, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe and to like my stuff. So yeah, there is that. Heck of a show today. I'm very happy with it. Hopefully you are too. Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, you all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.